All right, welcome back to Cylance TV. I am still Matt Stevenson, and this could be the last one of these we ever make because we have finally found the most interesting man alive, and he's not doing beer commercials. You may know him as CrYpT, if he's ever saved your life as a superhero. Some people know you as Jeremy Dodson. Yep. What I want to talk about, outside from the super cool thing being the technical director for Mr. Robot.
Yes, ARG stuff, yeah.
Let's dig into what you're doing, not necessarily on the show, but what got you on the show. Let's talk about puzzles.
Okay.
And I could just wind you up and let you go, but that would be an 8-hour mini-series. Let's start slow. What's the first one you ever finished as a kid?
Oh, okay, that's a fantastic question. Probably the biggest one was the Rubik's Cube. I was one of the ones that I had at the time, really good friend of the family, gave me Rubik's Cube and then also gave me a book on mathematical transmutations. And so I had to understand what was going on. And it's one of those things where if you know how to solve a Rubik's Cube, people that say, oh, I accidentally solved that as a kid, you realize that it's not possible because you have to make a certain number of moves, and at some point you then have to reverse those moves, making just one change. So just having that transmutation to make yourself get all the way back to resolve the cube. So there's a lot of destroying of the elements of the cube and bringing it back. And that was probably the biggest one that I was most proud of. I mean, there was a lot of small ones there, like just actual jigsaw puzzles, but that one I actually had to work at, and yeah, so.
Then you started doing the New York Times and Penn and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. All the pretentious stuff.
So fast forward to maybe not quite now, but in your adult life as a professional, you're up to a lot of different things, but it feels like puzzles and cryptography is a lot about what you do. What do you do? Let's see a really interesting example, perhaps, of what it is that you're doing with this type of work.
Well, this is, again, Curious Codes puts this together, so Ryan Clark and all of us. This was designed, and we'll put that close up.
My shaky coffee lady.
Yes,
hands.
This is called the Rosetta. This is a version 1. It has a, we use it as a training element to get people to be maybe a little bit less scared about learning things about cryptography in general. So this is like a stepping stone from going, it could be a stepping stone from not knowing anything to eventually doing some amazing RSA stuff or encryptions. But in the beginning, it has a lot of history on this particular device, everything from Nyctography from Lewis Carroll, Edgar Allan Poe's Goldbug. But it's all about getting people to learn things that they're afraid of. We find that people, when you demystify something, you have two types of individuals. They'll either not be interested in it anymore because it's no longer magical, or they'll become so passionate about it because it's something that no longer is scary and they've maybe always wanted to do it. And we usually find that that is what the result is, that people go, this is something I actually can do, and they want to soak it up and learn more. And that's what it's all about, is just trying to get people excited and learning new things. And we love puzzles, we love cryptography, we love all of that, so that's what we try and share our passion about.
Now, you mentioned Curious Codes. You guys aren't just making games for fun and profit. You guys are actually getting up to things that help society and maybe prevent the bad guys from doing bad things. Talk about that a little bit.
So obviously there's all the puzzles, and we do a lot of training stuff as well, for everywhere from, we're all hackers by trade, so everything from social engineering to how to think through problems, and then how not to rely on different tools that exist out there, for example, how important it is to understand holistically what's actually happening. And we model that with puzzles. We model that with different games, physical items that you can play with, virtual items that you can mess with. But in the end, it becomes, you have to become a better thinker. You have to be able to break down a problem. And more importantly, you maybe have to go outside of yourself to solve a problem. It's all about reaching out to other individuals, finding people's strengths that they don't even know exist. But when you do find it, you end up, we find that people then go, I want to learn that topic. You seem to know a lot about it. Let's get together and learn everything together. Like, here's the information I can share. And it's just amazing to watch people work like that. But yeah, so we do a lot of different trainings for how to think through problems, and that's pretty much it. Yeah.
And so you talk about doing trainings and for all levels of people involved in security and whatnot. In your experience, do you find it's easier with children or younger people or with adults, or is the brain malleable regardless as long as there's curiosity?
Definitely curiosity is important, but it's funny that you say that. We had a few years ago, my daughter's now 12, but a few years back, so about 4 years back, one of the processes in demystifying what I do, I find in a lot of industries, I also do woodworking and stuff like that, and in that industry, it is hard to find people that are willing to share knowledge. It's getting easier in the InfoSec industry to find people willing to share knowledge. Not everyone wants to listen, and most of the time we all tear it down, but what I did was take a lot of elements that I know that are simple that people think are super hard, and I taught my 8-year-old daughter how to do them. And I actually have found that I've used it as a method to help, I don't want to say older individuals, but us, as we get older, we get set in our ways. And I found that when starting with that story and or showing those different skills, it's been really helpful to get people to understand, be like, okay, maybe I don't know something. What is it that you can teach me? And I may not be able to teach you something new, or I may be able to give you a different perspective, but it's starting that conversation that's important. So in the beginning, sometimes it's easier to teach a child because they're just curious about everything. As an adult, I think we all want to be curious, but we've been sort of trained that we need to show a front and or not be vulnerable.
I don't feel that curiosity is necessarily considered an adult trait, which is a shame if you think about it. We should always be. But it feels like that gets trained out of us because you need to become an adult and go to work and do those things.
Yes, a good friend of mine, actually with part of Curious Codes, Ryan Clark, talks about that all the time. Magic has been left out of the world. Google has destroyed society. When we have magic, we see a magic show on stage, and we're immediately going to our phones to see how it's done, instead of just letting it sort of melt over us and sort of think about that stuff.
The greatest magic quote I've ever heard: magic is the cheat codes to reality.
Nice. Do you know where it was from?
Attribution, Warren Ellis, Transmetropolitan.
Oh.
No, Planetary, my bad.
Fantastic. Beautiful mind. I love that you can remember those details. But yeah, so we have found that in the end, you can get a lot of people to open up when they realize it's okay in the environment that they're in or with the company that they're with to say you don't know something. And that's what it's all about, because we all don't know everything, and we all don't know everything as much as we could know. You have the people that know a lot but aren't deep or whatever, and those individuals I actually love working with, because when I attack a problem, especially if I'm doing anything on a network or something, if I only know one element and maybe don't know all the different combining parts of it, I'm going to be less successful than if I know as much as I can to see how all the moving parts might work. I may not need to go super deep, but I can find someone that if I do need to go deep, it happens. And so curiosity is super important. And you're right, it is easier to find that in children. But I think all of us, when we are given the opportunity to and we feel comfortable, we let down our guard, and that's when amazing things happen. Yeah. So
now I love what you're talking about. You needing lots of elements, and you say we when you talk about building the puzzles.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit beforehand about some different disciplines involved in solving some of the puzzles that you guys at Curious Codes have put together. What's the most out there element? Because I think people tend to think that this needs to be mathematicians and hacker types and whatnot. What's the weirdest element that you've included in a puzzle that whether it took too long for people to figure it out, but just like, oh my God, how could that even be in there?
That's a great question. There are so many, and
How about a weird one?
So a weird one. Well, I mean, you guys got to experience one of the weird ones. So, you were presented with an image, and you had noticed, for example, you had the image of Kid and Play up, and you noticed an individual, and you were able to see different things. There was also the Zoltar that showed, like, where is that movie from? Like, what does it enact? Didn't need to know any math. You didn't need to know anything but pop culture or the ability to take an image and look at it.
See, Dad, an encyclopedic knowledge of 80s hip-hop actually came into play.
Oh, definitely. You can thank Ryan for that one. And then the image underneath, we had done some work on it so that you couldn't do a Google image search. Again, Google being the bane of our existence, we have to try and Google-proof things. And but it was just being able to break down that image and speak to it in raw terms that was allowed the group of us to find out what that was and put the rest of the pieces together. Now, that's just one part of it. There are crazier images. There are crazier puzzles. There are things that you learn, like we had talked about the moon language. You get introduced to different things, and then you learn that moon language might have been used in a movie, and that actor in that movie did something else that sort of ties all back, and it's really insane to get the right people in place on a team to sort of put all those pieces together, and then one or more people at the same time, just their light bulb goes off, and it's like, it's got to be this, and they test it, and sure enough it is. And it's just it's super rewarding as creators to see, and it's amazing to watch just people come together and take these weird little moments and images and knowledge of the different parts of each one of the bits of either the badges or the coins or whatever it is that we're doing, or and like I said for Mr. Robot ARG, the different elements of the show that come together, and sometimes they don't even know it's possible. Some of the stuff that we're able to sort of weave together, and it's really cool to watch. And so there's, like I said, there's a lot of them.
Now you mentioned coins and different elements, so we can't let this one go by. We got one more cool prop. Well, we got a lot, but we got one more for right now. Tell us about this.
So this, one of the things that Curious Codes...
So everybody can see.
Yeah, one of the things that Curious Codes and, and then here's the back, the beautiful back, and Lost in general, for the badges at Defcon and stuff, is that he had the challenge of trying to create something for a conference that had to be solved within a couple days. And his wife actually has stated, and it was probably one of the best quotes for it, is that he had to be smart enough to understand 20-something thousand people that they wouldn't solve it in one day, and they wouldn't solve it in 4 days. They had to come to a conclusion around that 3-day mark to make it a full experience, and he's sort of mastered that process. Well, with Curious Codes, we sort of wanted to step outside of that and take that 3-day limitation away, or 4-day, or whatever it was. And that particular coin that we just showed, it was solved by one of the Psychoholic members, Punk AB. Is a doctor.
Shout out, Punk AB.
Yeah. He's a doctor, absolutely amazing. He's actually our arch nemesis, where we try to create puzzles that he can't solve, and he continues to go, and it's an amazing back and forth, just like it is in security, between offense and defense, right? And so that particular puzzle took 1 year and 1 month to solve.
And without giving away the answer, I will let you know it involves Carl Sagan and a record label, but we're going to leave it at that.
Yes, that is definitely the start there. And yeah, so with the different puzzles, what we've been trying to do lately, especially I think when we started doing the Mr. Robot ARG, we got to see how many different people outside of InfoSec are actually interested in puzzles, and some brilliant minds there. And we have one individual in that element, goes by the name of Rue, who works really hard at building a community, and it's amazing to see, because we're used to it in the InfoSec industry, but to see it just as people that just like to watch television and or love shows about hacking and stuff, it's amazing to watch. And so we're trying to create now elements that train people to sort of embrace what their passions are. And we learn what people love, we know what we love, and we include that always. You can always tell, looking at different puzzles, what articles Ryan has been reading, or what things that I'm doing. And
my God, that's so meta. It's the puzzle inside the puzzle.
Yes.
Like, what album was he listening to?
It's funny, because there are people that will comb through his Twitter to sort of see what he's doing, and to hope to get it, to glean some stuff on any puzzles that get released, which of course we know, so of course we mess with it as well. But it's a
Games magazine from 1979.
Yes. And so it just becomes a matter of creating something that can be bigger than us, and that can be taken by a community of people that just want to learn and interact with each other, and just become more interesting people. That's just, I don't know, that's just what we love about it.
Dude, I think that's an amazing mantra for life. So let's build that community. If they're looking for you, I know there's probably 100 different outlets. Where's some places they could come and find what you're doing?
So we've been doing a lot of Twitch stuff lately. You can find us there. So twitch.tv/Curious Codes TV, I believe it is. And then there you'll have each one of our individual channels where we're doing woodworking, puzzles, synthesizers, building synthesizers, taking apart electronics. I'll be doing some hacking stuff there as well. And you can definitely follow at 10_57, and also at curious_codes on Twitter. And you'll get to see all the cool stuff that we're doing.
Lots more good stuff coming, so make sure you check us out at .com. Also, I am at PacMat73, also at Cylance Inc. and at Cylance Insider. Probably nothing this cool unless we just come back and do him again, but lots more coming up. Stick around.